There is a strange feeling spreading across the modern world. It has no official name. It doesn't show up in medical tests. It isn't a clear diagnosis. Yet almost everyone feels it. A kind of exhaustion that rest doesn't fix. A sense of guilt that doesn't come from a specific mistake. A constant pressure to function, respond, produce, without knowing exactly why. You wake up tired, you work tired, you rest tired, and quietly you feel as if you are always behind. Behind on time, behind on attention, behind on performance, behind on becoming someone better than you seem able to be. What's unsettling is that no one openly accuses you. There is no visible judge, no clear voice saying, "You failed." And yet, the feeling remains, as if something is always watching, evaluating, recording, and you don't quite know what. This kind of discomfort feels modern, connected to phones, social media, work culture, metrics, algorithms. But it's older than all of that. Long before screens, notifications, and digital systems, someone described this exact sensation with disturbing precision, without explaining it, without comforting the reader, without offering a way out. His name was Franz Kafka. Kafka didn't write about monsters, ghosts, or obvious conspiracies. He wrote about ordinary people trying to live and failing without understanding why. Men who wake up already guilty, workers who follow rules no one explains, individuals who try to defend themselves without knowing what they're accused of. In Kafka's world, anxiety doesn't come from a single trauma. It comes from routine, from silence, from waiting, from the feeling that something important is being decided, always without you. That's why his stories disturb people so deeply, because they don't feel like fantasy, they feel familiar. Kafka wrote about systems that don't answer, authorities that don't explain themselves, processes that continue even when no one understands their purpose. And, most disturbingly, no one in these systems seems intentionally cruel. They are simply doing their jobs. The suffering doesn't come from obvious evil, it comes from organized indifference. This is the Kafkaesque world, a world where you do everything right and still feel that something is wrong, where guilt exists before accusation, where exhaustion comes before effort, where anxiety appears without a clear enemy. Kafka didn't try to explain this world. He didn't analyze it. He didn't diagnose it. He simply showed it. And maybe that's why, decades later, the more the world advances, the more people feel like they're living inside one of his stories, even if they've never read a single page. Because the real horror in Kafka isn't absurdity, it's recognition. You don't read Kafka and think, this could never happen. You read him and think, this is exactly how it feels. And perhaps the most unsettling thought of all is this. Kafka described a world where no one fully understands the system, but everyone feels its weight. A world where living isn't forbidden, but never seems to be enough. And if you feel this today, it's not because something went wrong with you. It may be because this world was already described with unsettling precision. And you are inside it. One of the most disturbing ideas present in Franz Kafka's work is that guilt appears before any wrongdoing.
His characters do not break clear laws. They do not commit obvious crimes. They do not violate explicit rules. And yet, they feel guilty. This guilt does not arise from a concrete action. It cannot be traced back to a specific event. It has no clear origin. It simply exists. Diffuse, persistent, almost natural. In The Trial, Joseph K. wakes up one morning and discovers that he is being prosecuted. He is not taken to a conventional prison. He is not handcuffed. He is not interrogated in any traditional way. He is merely informed that a case has been opened against him. No formal accusation is presented. No clear explanation is offered. No deadline is defined. And yet, something changes. Joseph K. does not react like an innocent man facing injustice. He does not immediately rebel. He does not demand answers with conviction. He begins to justify himself. That is the most unsettling detail. The system does not need to prove anything. It does not need to present evidence. It does not even need to clearly accuse. The individual starts acting as if there must be something wrong with him. Kafka understood something essential about the psychological functioning of modern power. The most effective form of control is not open repression, but the kind that leads the individual to monitor himself. From that moment on, everything becomes subject to internal review. Every decision made in the past, every word spoken in old conversations, every seemingly trivial action. A silent question emerges. What if it was there? What if it was that? What if I did something without realizing it? This kind of control does not rely on physical punishment. It relies on ambiguity. Rules that exist but are never fully known. Standards that seem to shift invisibly. Expectations that are never clearly stated. You do not know exactly what is required. You only feel that it is never enough. When something goes wrong, the blame falls on you, even if the system is confusing, even if the rules are contradictory, even if the game is impossible to win. Failure is interpreted as a personal flaw, not as a structural consequence. Kafka describes a world where responsibility is individual, but power is impersonal. No one presents themselves as executioner. No one assumes the role of final judge. The system operates through delegation, through fragments, through corridors, through layers that never fully reveal themselves. Everyone participates. No one answers. And this produces a very specific form of anxiety, the feeling of always falling short. Even when everything appears to be functioning, job, routine, social recognition, a background discomfort remains, the sense that something still needs to be fixed, that you could be doing more, being more efficient, more productive, more adequate. This guilt does not disappear with rest. It is not resolved by success. It is not dissolved by external approval. It merely changes its language. Kafka offers no relief from this because in his universe the problem is not moral. It is not about being good or bad, right or wrong. It is about existing within a system where judgment is constant, but the criteria are never revealed. And perhaps that is exactly why Kafka remains so relevant, because he did not write about a mistake to be corrected, but about a permanent psychological condition, a state in which guilt does not require a crime, judgment does not require a judge, and condemnation does not need to be announced. It simply happens. And it keeps happening, silently. As Kafka's work unfolds, it becomes clear that the problem is not a single event, but the environment itself. There is no central villain, no precise moment when everything breaks. What exists is a labyrinth, not made of walls, but of procedures, expectations, and silence. Kafka describes systems that appear to function perfectly, precisely because no one can see the whole. Each person occupies a small role. One employee stamps a paper, another forwards it, another just follows orders. Responsibility dissolves until it disappears. And this creates a deeply unsettling sensation. There is no one to appeal to. When Joseph K. tries to understand his trial, he encounters only corridors, improvised offices, exhausted officials, and vague answers. Everyone knows something, but no one knows enough. Everyone has authority, yet no one truly decides anything. The system does not impose itself through force. It imposes itself through confusion. Kafka understood that when rules are clear, they can be questioned. But when they are diffuse, internalized, almost invisible, they become far more effective. The individual never knows exactly what is required, only that they are always falling short. This is the core of the Kafkaesque labyrinth. No matter how hard you try, there is always another form, another procedure, another level above you. And the more you attempt to adjust, the deeper you lose yourself in the attempt. Another disturbing aspect is how this state becomes normalized. Kafka's characters are unsettled at first, but soon they treat the absurd as routine. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. The unjustifiable becomes normal. This may be the element closest to modern reality. Because oppressive systems rarely present themselves as open threats. They present themselves as processes, as protocols, as technical necessities. The language is neutral, cold, administrative. But the psychological impact is profound. The individual begins to shape his life not in search of meaning, but in pursuit of compliance. Fear is no longer tied to direct punishment, but to silent exclusion, delay, invisible mistakes, being slightly out of alignment. Kafka shows that the most effective labyrinth is not the one you cannot escape physically, but the one you cannot escape mentally. Even when there are no guards, control remains. Even when there are no explicit commands, obedience continues. Power does not shout here, it waits. And while it waits, it watches. What is most unsettling is that in Kafka's world, no one seems truly shocked by this reality. There is discomfort, yes, anxiety, yes, but no organized revolt, no collective moment of rupture. Each character faces their confusion alone, and this reveals something crucial. Systems like this do not need to crush crowds. They only need to fragment them, to turn each person into an isolated case, convinced that the problem lies within themselves. Kafka does not describe a distant dystopian future. He describes a logic, a structure, a mode of operation that can exist in any era under different names, where order is opaque, guilt is constant, and meaning never fully reveals itself. The labyrinth does not need walls once it has been internalized, and perhaps that is why, even without clear endings or definitive answers, Kafka's work continues to disturb, because it does not end. It continues to operate. In the end, Kafka offers no liberation. There is no final revelation, no moment where everything is explained. And this is not a narrative failure. It is the point. When Joseph K. finally reaches the end of his trial, he still does not know what he is accused of. There is no clear sentence, no visible jury, no definitive argument, only the silent acceptance that the system has decided, and that is enough. The most disturbing element is not the violence of the ending, it is the absence of resistance. Kafka seems to suggest that the system's true victory is not punishment, but persuasion. The moment when the individual no longer believes that fighting is meaningful. Submission does not come from explicit fear, but from exhaustion, mental fatigue, the constant feeling of being late, inadequate, always lacking something. Guilt does not need to be proven, it only needs to be felt. At this point, something becomes painfully clear. The experiment no longer depends on those who created it. It continues because it has been internalized. The rules no longer need to be enforced. They are reproduced automatically. Each person becomes their own inspector, their own judge, their own jailer. Kafka was not writing about a specific state or about a single historical moment. He was writing about a logic, a psychological mechanism that can take countless forms: bureaucracy, morality, productivity, success, failure, normality. The name changes, the structure remains. And that may be why his work never ages, because it does not describe a place, it describes a condition, a permanent state of diffuse surveillance where no one needs to give orders because everyone already knows what is expected of them. The experiment works best when no one realizes they're inside it. There is no need for bars when fear is internal. No need for constant punishment when guilt is automatic. No need for answers when the questions have already been abandoned. Kafka does not tell us how to escape the labyrinth. He only shows that it exists. And in doing so, he leaves one question suspended without a clear answer. If the system has no face, if guilt has no clear origin, if the rules are never fully visible, who is actually running the experiment? Perhaps the answer is the most unsettling of all. Perhaps no one is. Perhaps it keeps functioning because we have learned to keep it moving. And as long as we believe confusion is a personal failure and not a structure, the experiment will never need to end. Because it has already become part of the way we live, and those who are inside rarely notice when they entered.